Welcome to the Hyperion Hub, your meeting place for all things Disney. And now your hosts.
Hello and welcome to the Hyperion Hub. I'm John Alois and joined by Sean Degenhart.
Aloha.
And John Redling Schaefer.
Howdy, howdy.
We hope you're having a great week. This is our second Marvel episode, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to let you know you can contact us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter at Hub Hyperion, or you can email us or send us a voice-recorded message at podcast@thehyperionhub.com. We like to start the show off with our Disney View, and recently Disney announced the opening date of their new land, Avengers Campus in Disney California Adventure in Disneyland. And I think we were all a little surprised by how soon it's opening. June 4th, a little over a month after Disneyland reopens. The land will feature 2 attractions on opening day with more to come. Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, which is already there, and Web Slingers, a Spider-Man adventure. There will be a couple of well-propped out meet and greets, and I think there may be an outdoor show area, or it might be down the line. We'll see. A restaurant called Pym Test Kitchen, and a couple of merchandise locations. So, Avengers Campus in Disneyland is opening June 4th, and unfortunately, they'll still be at probably 15% capacity. Fortunately for the people who are there, they're going to have free reign of the place.
Is the Spider-Man attraction, that's the one where they were testing the flying audio animatronic character?
So I don't think it'll be part of the attraction. I think it'll be some sort of show that happens above you. The attraction is going to be reminiscent to like a Buzz Lightyear type of attraction.
Okay.
Where physically in the park is this going to be?
It's where the Bugs Land, right?
Yep. So it took the place of a Bugs Land. That's
Okay.
completely gone, and it kind of hugs. I'm guessing, I haven't been there in a while, but it hugs Harbor Boulevard on that side, and it's going to stretch down to Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. So that whole area. So it's bigger than what a Bugs Land was, I think. Okay, we are getting ready for our Marvel 101 series Part 2. First, a quick recap. Marvel Comics #1 hit newsstands in 1939. The company wouldn't settle on the name Marvel till the 1960s, when so many of their characters were created, and they're still in use today. Throughout the 1970s and into the 80s, Marvel tackled social and political concerns and never shied away from real-world problems. Now we're heading into a new world of storytelling for Marvel. In 1986, 42 years following the Captain America movie serials, Marvel saw its first character on the big screen in the full-length live-action feature, Howard the Duck. An absolute dud, both critically and financially. The weak plot follows Howard, a sarcastic alien duck traveling to Earth to stop an alien invasion with the help of love interest Leah Thompson. George Lucas retired from filmmaking to produce, and he chose this movie. You would think Lucasfilm and Universal Pictures partnering up to create a comic book-based film would spell success, but not this time. The special effects are subpar, the acting is wooden, the innuendos are weird. It's said 2 studio executives got into a fist fight over who greenlit the film. It was a mess.
So it sounds like you like it, John. It sounds like a great flick.
Yeah, I don't recommend this movie. In 1989, arguably the company's darkest character, the Punisher, found his way into theaters. The bitter anti-hero has no problem hurting or even killing villains. It was another flop. 1990's Captain America didn't even reach theaters in the U.S., but at least it found its way to home video, unlike 1994's Fantastic Four. This hokey, low-budget film is actually legendary by how bad it is, even inspiring a documentary. Needless to say, Hollywood wasn't the place for Marvel at this point. One problem was Marvel didn't have its own distribution opportunities, so it sold off licensing rights to basically anyone who would buy them. New World had The Punisher, 20th Century Fox, Cap, the X-Men, Daredevil, and the FF. Universal, The Hulk, New Line, Blade, and Columbia Sony, Men in Black, and Spider-Man. Characters making their debuts in the 1980s and 1990s included She-Hulk, Taskmaster, Rogue, Monica Rambeau, Hobgoblin, Beta Ray Bill, Venom, Carnage, and Deadpool.
Beta Ray Bill.
It's part of the Thor world.
You
I
know,
mention him because I have a feeling
Which we-
he's actually a very popular character, but I have a feeling he's going to show up at some point.
I just got the calm it down hand motion for John. For those of you who
Take
can't
it
see that,
easy.
so I guess I'll be quiet.
Take it easy. During the 80s and 90s, the industry changed. Bigger, broader stories filled the pages, and we saw the crossover event take shape with Contest of Champions and Secret Wars. This meant story arcs taking place throughout several books, not just in one title. Marvel Entertainment was sold several times throughout the 80s and 90s. Captivating stories, a kids line, Star Comics, and trading cards all contributed to a successful run, though. There was a comic book boom happening. Suddenly, books from the Golden Age were skyrocketing in value, so the industry tried to take advantage of it all. In the 1990s, books were released with several variant covers, and fans became investors, purchasing books at an alarming rate. The crash hit in the middle of the decade, and it hit hard. Marvel Entertainment Group filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in 1996. The company ended up with Toy Biz as its owner and was saved. Marvel Enterprises continued to push forward with creative storytelling under Joe Quesada, who launched Marvel Knights, a grittier approach to characters like Daredevil, the Inhumans, and Black Panther. The new millennium began, and Marvel pulled out of the Comics Code Authority, establishing its own rating system. They created Max Comics, which was an explicit line. You can see why Disney was hesitant to purchase the company when it did. As we know, their films weren't very successful till the late 90s, when little-known properties, Men in Black and Blade, hit at the box office. Men in Black features a secret organization devoted to policing and monitoring extraterrestrial activities on our planet. Blade, the human-vampire hybrid, is a vampire hunter. Blade was the most well-known property to finally hit, leading the way for the Marvel age of films.
I had no idea Men in Black was tied in, John. I really didn't know that. I loved that movie. I thought it was fantastic. And, you know, a lot of that has to do with casting, don't get me wrong. But I did. I truly enjoyed, you know, maybe it's the continuation of what we talked about in the first episode of taking real world and then interspersing all of this unknown underbelly, so to speak, you know, putting the spaceships at the World's Fair display in New York. Just some of that stuff, that's really cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, they're fun for sure. In 1994, MCA, the owner of Universal Studios, negotiated theme park rights for the Marvel characters, and Superhero Island in Orlando, Florida, opened in 1999. The headline attractions were and still are The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man and The Incredible Hulk coaster. Have either of you guys been to Marvel Superhero Island?
I've been to Universal, but never, for obvious reasons, probably ventured my way over.
It's cool. It's very nostalgic, and it's very dated.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You said 99?
Mm-hmm. They can't update, and we'll talk about that.
Right, exactly.
Back to the films. In the year 2000, Fox released X-Men, and finally, Marvel reached the mainstream on the silver screen. Bryan Singer's opening film starred Patrick Stewart as Dr. Charles Xavier, Ian McKellen as Magneto, and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Great start to an amazing franchise. Speaking of amazing, next up came Columbia's Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire as the Webhead, Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, and Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. Another smash hit, and Marvel was on a roll. Unfortunately, the 2000s weren't always kind to Marvel films. Hulk, along with Punisher, Daredevil, and some of the X films are considered misses. Fantastic Four found moderate success, and one of the stars, Chris Evans, took his first shot at Marvel as Johnny Storm.
And that is such a weird departure from knowing him as Captain America, because those roles are so polar opposite each other.
Yeah, he's a punk teenage kid in one version and, Captain America in the other one. Along the way, Marvel Studios was established, and an up-and-coming producer named Kevin Feige was climbing the executive ladder. In the mid-2000s, Feige began planning a shared universe where the central characters would be the Avengers. He was named president of production for the newly established Marvel Studios in 2007 and launched what would become the Marvel Cinematic Universe the following year with Marvel Studios' first film, Iron Man, directed by Jon Favreau, starring Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. The world of comic book movies changed when S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson, entered a post-credit scene, mentioned the Avenger Initiative to Stark, and you knew something special was about to happen. Tony Stark made a cameo in the next MCU film, The Incredible Hulk, establishing the shared universe. The next movie in the series, Iron Man 2, has a touch of Disney in it. The Stark Expo feels a whole lot like the 1964 World's Fair, so the musical theme of the Expo, Make Way for Tomorrow Today, pays tribute to There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow from the Carousel of Progress. And who better than Richard Sherman to write the song? Also, Howard Stark filmed a segment for the Expo that was inspired by Walt's Epcot film. So I think there was some luring going on.
Absolutely.
In 2007, the company launched Marvel Unlimited, which is an online service that today has almost 30,000 past comic book issues. While all this was happening, Disney was creating a short list of companies they were targeting to acquire to meet what they thought were their biggest needs. The purchase of Pixar in 2006 helped revitalize Disney Animation. Their larger growth strategy, according to then CEO Bob Iger, was to 1. Increase their amount of high-quality branded content, 2. Advance technologically both in their ability to create more compelling products and to deliver those products to consumers, and 3. Grow globally. They concentrated on existing intellectual properties. They felt there were two companies who had great IP that could apply across the full range of their businesses. One was Lucasfilm, and the other, of course, Marvel Entertainment. Iger wasn't a gigantic comic book fan growing up, but he could see what was happening with the MCU. There were some challenges to consider. Licensing rights to films and the theme parks were spread in many different places. But probably the biggest challenge was simply working with the eccentric person who ran Marvel, Ike Perlmutter. He was a former Israeli military who never appeared in public or allowed pictures of himself to be taken. He was CEO and controlling shareholder. In Iger's book, The Ride of a Lifetime, he tells these detailed stories of how difficult it was dealing with Perlmutter. It took 6 months just to get the first meeting. Stories include what Perlmutter served him in their meetings: a glass of water and a banana from Costco.
Really rolling out the red carpet there.
Man, this takes Walt Disney's meetings over Mary Poppins to a new level, huh? Goodness gracious.
Perlmutter had reservations about Disney. He had built Marvel up from when it was in financial trouble to a company back on the rise in the mid-2000s. Eventually, it came down to a phone call from Disney's largest shareholder and board member, Steve Jobs, who, by the way, didn't like the idea of purchasing Marvel, but trusted Bob Iger. He called Perlmutter to vouch Disney would let Marvel run itself the way they did with Pixar. Disney announced the deal in August of 2009. Marvel Studios still had 2 films to release under the Paramount distribution deal, but Disney actually released the soundtracks for those films and was officially involved in the MCU. Thor, starring Chris Hemsworth, and Captain America, The First Avenger, starring Chris Evans, were the final precursors to Disney's first MCU film in 2012, The Avengers, directed by Joss Whedon. A box office smash, and at the time, the highest grossing film worldwide in Disney history at $1.5 billion. Now, do you guys have any memories or what were your thoughts when Disney purchased Marvel?
Pixar made sense. Why wouldn't they? And so just thinking Disney, classic Disney like we know and love, you're thinking, how is this going to get shoehorned in to everything? How is it going to incorporate with parks and with everything else?
I agree with Sean 100%. I was completely buffaloed. The whole interconnectivity, it wasn't there. I mean, this is a completely different universe. I didn't understand.
Looking back, are you happy with that decision? Do you think that they have increased your love for the company? Do you enjoy what they're doing?
Absolutely. I think for me, it's almost like Disney's your one-stop shop. I mean, we've got Pixar, we've got Disney, we've got Marvel, we've got Star Wars.
I've often read stories about Jim Henson when he was sick, and there was one company he thought and knew could take care of Kermit and his universe, and he went to Disney, and they figured a way. So every time there's a big acquisition, whether it be Star Wars or Marvel, I think along with Sean's line of thinking that, you know what, these people, whether Mr. Perlmutter or whatever was originally concerned, they over time realized that their baby was going to be taken care of and nurtured. And you're right, maybe some independence thrown in with it, but there's only one place really where these ideas and these concepts are going to be fostered and nurtured into a way that a non-comic book guy will even hear about or learn to care about. And so I think looking back, yes, absolutely a wise decision from a business and a practical standpoint.
And to go along with that, the purchase of Marvel allowed Disney to integrate their new characters into pre-existing worlds. Spider-Man, Iron Man, Thor, and Hulk showed up on the animated TV show Phineas and Ferb and in the video game Disney Infinity. This all went with the highly successful series of new TV cartoons Disney airs on their various networks. Among those shows were Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and Marvel Rising. Stories from lesser-known Marvel characters inspired a Disney animated film, Big Hero 6. There was a side series of darker stories from the MCU for Netflix that included Daredevil and Jessica Jones. The MCU reached network TV when ABC premiered Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Feige introduced different phases to the MCU, which broke up the story arcs. Within those phases, he included sequels like Iron Man 3 and Captain America Winter Soldier, but also brought in new characters to the series like Doctor Strange and little-known Guardians of the Galaxy, which featured Earthling Peter Quill and his band of misfits that included a talking raccoon and a tree. Another hit film, both critically and financially. Disney even struck a deal with Sony to get Spider-Man into the MCU. Spidey had started floundering following Spider-Man 3. The next series, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, starring Andrew Garfield, drew flat responses, so Sony and Disney worked out a deal to where Disney could essentially rent the character for their movies. Disney owns the publishing and animation TV rights, but not the movie rights. Spider-Man made his MCU debut in Captain America Civil War, and Marvel fans went nuts for it. Tom Holland would don the red and blue suit and would eventually get his own feature films in the series. Sony was successful with Spidey in their animated film Into the Spider-Verse in 2018, which introduced a different take on the character. Miles Morales is a 13-year-old boy who was bitten by a genetically engineered spider. What's unique about the character is he's not Peter Parker. He's biracial, and so brings different experiences to the character. Brian Michael Bendis and artist Sarah Pichelli created him. By the way, Into the Spider-Verse won Best Animated Film at the 2019 Academy Awards.
It was a great movie.
I love the style. I love the art direction and the character design, and
It's like you were watching a comic book come to life.
very well done. Back to the MCU. New characters like Ant-Man, Black Panther, and Captain Marvel have all joined the fight. Black Panther, starring the late Chadwick Boseman, and Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson, both earned over $1 billion each at the box office. The 21 previous films all led to 2019's Avengers Endgame, directed by the Russo brothers. At the time, the highest grossing film in history at almost $3 billion worldwide. Audio reactions to the emotional climax were recorded in theaters all over the world, and to be honest, it gives me goosebumps wherever I hear them. And I do watch those videos quite often.
Well, making us wait that long to hear the tagline, Avengers Assemble, I mean, that is an unforgettable moment.
Avengers!
Assemble.
That line and the hammer going to, spoiler alert, the hammer flying to Cap. Which was set up, 5 years earlier. I remember our theater just going crazy. It's one of the loudest ovations I've ever heard in a movie-going experience. In March of 2019, Disney purchased 20th Century Fox to bolster its new streaming service, Disney+. Along with that purchase came the film rights to the X-Men and Fantastic Four franchises and characters. Kevin Feige has already announced those characters will eventually join the MCU. In the theme parks, due to the licensing agreement with Universal Studios theme parks, Disney's currently barred from using some of their own Marvel characters east of the Mississippi and in Tokyo Disneyland. However, whatever characters aren't already in use at Universal are fair game. Unfortunately, characters who are simply used on signage or in painted murals are currently off limits. Black Panther is on a small painted wall at Islands of Adventure, so Disney can't currently build Wakanda in Walt Disney World. But they can create a Guardians of the Galaxy coaster in Epcot, which they're building. Disneyland has the opportunity to use all Marvel characters, so they've built Avengers Campus, as we talked about, a new themed land opening on June 4th at Disney California Adventure. Similar campuses are being built in Disneyland Paris and Hong Kong Disneyland. As for Universal in Orlando, supposedly there's no end to the deal for the theme park rights. However, Disney does have some leverage. They own the characters, so Universal pays licensing fees to parent company Disney, and any changes to the land have to go through Disney. The land itself, Marvel Superhero Island at Islands of Adventure, is very dated in the style of the 1990s versions of the characters. Disney won't let them upgrade to modern-looking characters because Universal won't let them use the characters in the Walt Disney World theme parks. Supposedly, merchandising is the reason Universal hasn't given up the theme park rights yet. People spend a lot of money on those Spidey t-shirts. But Universal can't really change anything. All they can do is upgrade for safety reasons. I think they're waiting for one of their own properties to hit, and eventually, I feel, they'll replace the land with something else, and Disney will do something amazing with Marvel in Walt Disney World.
I mean, this is maybe the lawyer coming out in me. This isn't an agreement into perpetuity. I mean, this is seriously a contract forever.
That's the way I understand it.
I would love to see. I would love to see it. I mean, those. It's just insane that those would last so long. And it's funny, this mutual assured destruction game that they have playing. Nope, no changes. Fine. Well, then you can't do this. Well, then you can't do that. I mean, it's rather childish at points, but I get it.
I don't know. I just think eventually that whole area is going to be so dated that some executives are going to walk through there and say, you know what? Raise the white flag. Let's get something new in here. Let's figure out something else we can do. I would do that. I mean,
well, right, and it's interesting you mentioned the merchandising being the part of it. I completely agree with that. It's just interesting though that in my world, the idea of drafting a contract that never expires, there's a series of reasons why that just doesn't compute. It's just amazing that, and I get it. I mean, let me ask this then. There are Marvel-related things on the cruise ships. Is that east of the Mississippi? What if they take the boat around to the other side? You follow my logic here? I mean, how creative has Disney gotten with this?
Well, those aren't theme parks. So that's why they're able to have a Marvel store in Disney Springs. They have a complete Marvel store there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you guys remember, so Avengers was their first movie, right, for Marvel under Disney. They had an Avengers wrap on the monorail that could only run between the hotels. It could not go to Epcot because technically the monorail goes inside the theme park.
Goes in.
Huh.
Yep. That's interesting.
One way that they've kind of skated around it is they had an exhibit in Norway where they looked at the Norse gods, the Thor characters, but those weren't technically Marvel characters. In the 2000s and 2010s, characters making their debuts include the Runaways, the Ultimates, Red Hulk, Miles Morales, Spider-Gwen, Kamala Khan, and America Chavez. That brings us to today. Marvel Entertainment LLC has never left New York City. Its chairman remains Ike Perlmutter. Kevin Feige is the chief creative officer. Former publisher Dan Buckley serves as president, and Joe Quesada is creative director. Marvel's successful because it's relatable. The real world is its inspiration. It's not always about good guys versus bad guys. There are gray areas, and Marvel dives headfirst into those areas, and for over 80 years has produced rich, deep stories. As long as there's creativity left, those stories and the new ones not yet told are endless. So I was a Marvel fan, but now I'm truly a Marvel fan, and it's because of what's happened in the last decade and a half that I just have fallen in love with these characters. What they were able to bring to the movies, and just learning more about them as time goes on.
Well, the storytelling's incomparable. I mean, to have a story arc spread over that many years, and just the way everything incorporated and worked together, little insignificant things from a film, that 5 years later has a payoff. It's just incredible.
Well, and that's what maybe the outsider in me is trying to wrap his head around. How difficult is it to incorporate all of that from all of the different origins? I don't think I'll ever fully appreciate it the way you guys do. I mean, that it is, from what you're describing, a universe, and that's amazing.
Well, and my introduction basically has been through the MCU, so it has prompted me to learn more about where this character came from and how were these characters connected before, these films came out.
Yeah, I like that, because it's okay to work backwards, because I'm sitting here going, all right, what's the very first thing I need to look at? Well, what you're telling me is it's okay to watch something you really like and now go study how they got there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, to be totally honest, I can't remember what I knew about Doctor Strange or Ant-Man or even Iron Man before the movies. I didn't know much about them.
Well, they were mostly B-level characters, weren't they? I mean, Iron Man wasn't a major player in the comics.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's what's so amazing about what they were able to do with what they had. They didn't have all the characters. They didn't have the rights to the film rights. But what do we have? And let's do something with it. And most importantly, in my opinion, the directors and the cast. That's what's made the MCU. And especially those first 4 movies, they were so important. And to have a Joe Johnson, take over Captain America, First Avenger, who shot, by the way, or directed The Rocketeer, a similar 1940s film. They just made the right decision. Jon Favreau is phenomenal. And Kenneth Branagh. All these guys came together, and Joss Whedon with Avengers, and they just continued to make the right calls as they went on. And the cast, I can't think of a better cast than what they have. So Kevin Feige and everyone else involved needs to be credited for putting Marvel on the map and getting us to read those old issues, and now we have those on our tablets and anywhere else that we can find them. So this was great. I will be honest, this took a long time of research, a lot of research, but I loved every second of it. So whoever asked, I think it was John who asked.
Incorporating the history, I mean, Stan Lee, to some, everybody can equate to how he got into this, but my kids to learn about Stan Lee and Big Hero 6, and, your narrative here from start to finish can fill in so many gaps about the company, about the characters, and about its immersion into the Disney universe, so to speak. I learned a heck of a lot, so I appreciate all your efforts.
Well, I'm sure I missed some favorites, and please, if there's anything that you would like to know more about or you think we should know about, please email us at podcast@thehyperionhub.com. Sources for the research for both this episode and the previous episode include boxofficemojo.com, marvel.com, Marvel Year by Year published by DK, The Marvel Book by Stephen Wycheck, The Ride of a Lifetime by Robert Iger, Variety.com, and WashingtonPost.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can contact us through Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. We're at Hub Hyperion. And once again, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review us so more people can find the show. Guys, have a marvelous week.
Find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Hyperion Hub is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company or its subsidiaries. We'll meet you next time at the Hyperion Hub.
Excelsior!